Thank you for joining us for this new episode of Bloodhound Pix. As always, I am one of your hosts, Craig.
Kyle.
And
Each time it's gonna be a little bit longer. The anticipation of Josh's introduction.
I mean, come on, cut me some slack. I haven't done this for a long time.
So this is our first episode back with the new year, and there's been a lot that's happened in the world right now, in our country especially, but let's talk some horror instead. And we're going to be some fictional horror, not the real horrors of the world. As we kind of mentioned in prior episodes, we recorded, because of everything, we recorded a bunch of our stuff in a stockpile, basically. So this is our first time all back together in a while. And we are coming back with our top 10 of 2020, which 2020 was actually, despite all the bad stuff that went on, it was a surprisingly good year for horror and indie horror. So, as always, we can get this started. We are going to kind of, in a way to make things easier, we're going to give our top 10 by our 6 through 10. We will just be saying really quickly, and then our top 5 we will then be discussing in more detail. So I'll go first. As always, my number 10 is 1BR. My number 9 is Mortuary Collection. Number 8 is Dogs Don't Wear Pants. Number 7 is Sea Fever. And my number 6, before I get down to my top 5, is The Hunt. Who wants to go next?
Go ahead, Kyle.
All right. So my number 10 is The Invisible Man. My number 9 is Uncle Peckerhead. My number 8 is The Mortuary Collection. Number 7 is Scare Package. And number 6 is Scare Me.
Nice. Okay, so now it's going to be me. At number 10 for me is After Midnight. Number 9 for me is May the Devil Take You To. Number 8 for me is Host.
Okay.
7 for me is Alive. There were 2 films called Alive in 2020. Yep. I'm talking about the John Hyams one. Okay. And 6 for me is Color Out of Space.
It's actually, so the Alive you're talking about is the one where the 2 people wake up in the hospital? Or in the...
No.
Oh, not that one.
No, I think that isn't that one the one that I think it's #alive.
Yeah.
No, that
John Hyams.
The zombie one is #alive. The Korean zombie.
Oh, okay. Well, then there's
Alive.
Then there's 3.
Yeah.
Good Lord.
There's 3 Alive.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So the Alive that I'm talking about is directed by John Hyams, and it's if you saw it, you know damn well what I'm talking about. But that one is essentially a real simple kidnapping type story that I just thought was it was nothing like that original, but it was very effectively done.
Okay. And then I always forget about Uncle, even when we just talked about it last time, Kyle, Uncle Peckerhead, for some reason.
Yeah.
2020, as a lot of people have mentioned, and all of that is kind of broken up into all of these different parts and feels like it was 3 years worth of time. So there's stuff that came out in January that I'm like, oh yeah, that was a movie that came out this year. And
I thought you were gonna say 2020 has broken you.
Oh, that too. Yes.
Yeah, I was like, holy shit! I actually saw 2 of these in a theater. Remember that
Yeah.
shit?
Yeah, unbelievably.
I think.
Yeah, weird.
I was like, I can't even remember now. Color Out of Space might have been the last thing I saw in a theater when they did that special screen, or maybe it was the Lodge or something. But so moving on to our top 5s. So my number 5 is a film that we actually had the pleasure of seeing in 2019, thanks to, I believe it was Fright Fest. We reviewed it through Ginger Nuts of Horror, but it didn't come out until 2020 officially, so I get to use it in this list. And that is Come to Daddy, starring Elijah Wood, Stephen McHattie, Michael Smiley. And it is about a son who gets a note from his estranged father that he has basically never met to come visit him, and he goes to visit his father in this very remote area. But then something is very off about his father. That seems like the father doesn't want him there, and then the father does, and there's all these, it kind of borders on black comedy, surrealism. It's a crime thriller at times, it's a horror movie at times, psychological. It is just this very kind of offbeat movie that, I don't know, it's the first time in a while, especially with us doing these reviews so constantly and even doing this podcast, where I watched something and you couldn't really predict what was going to happen. Like, you were just along for the ride, because it goes into so many weird places and somehow it works. I think Elijah Wood, with the exception of like Maniac, his version of that, he probably does his best acting in this movie. Like, it really, I think, works to his advantage. And Stephen McHattie is always great, but he's especially great in this, since Pontypool is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. And yeah, if anybody else has anything else to say on it.
Yeah, no, I loved it too, and you kind of tapped into, I think, what we all probably saw when we reviewed it, was the unpredictability and just like the level of the writing, as opposed to everything else we've probably reviewed, that you actually don't know where it's going. It actually is going to surprise you. It actually is, keeping you guessing.
Yeah, I don't know if this would have made my list anyway, but I was struggling to even call this a horror film.
Yeah,
doesn't mean that it's not. I mean, like I said, I don't even know if it would have made mine anyway, but I think I had written it down just to make sure I didn't forget about it. And I was like, yeah, I don't even know if you could call this a straight up, like Craig said, it kind of goes, it's definitely many different genres. I just don't know how prevalent horror is in it, but doesn't make it any less, entertaining.
Yeah. I mean, one of the strengths of it too is that there really is no small character. I feel like any side character kind of gets a nice highlight. There's a whole conversation about a cop coming in and talking about the beady, or the different people's eyes. He can tell if they're evil or not by the shape of their eyes, and it's just this weird, funny moment. But yeah. Kyle, you're up.
All right. Speaking of ones we don't know whether we can call it horror or not, my number 5 is Shakespeare Shitstorm, which isn't really a horror movie, but there is so much gross out, fucked up things happening that you kind of have to be a horror fan to appreciate it, probably. And it's sort of the plot of The Tempest or something, but in Traumaville. I mean, it doesn't really matter how we synopsize this one. It's just totally ridiculous, gross out humor, satire, anything you can think of, they're going to make fun of and mock. And was one of the more fun ones we had to review this year for sure. Especially
Yeah.
having some more pretentious films to watch. It was nice to watch a movie that was not taking itself seriously at all.
That is what I noticed this year in general, is that I think maybe because of how hard the year was and how, the past couple of years have been people making these very brooding, very serious horror movies that maybe, for myself personally, the coming across like the more comedic leaning horror movies I was, I don't know, happier with, or I was just accepting more, like, oh, this is a nice relief or something. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it really, when you watch a pretentious movie that isn't good and has no humor, it makes you realize how much further it goes, that like, even if the movie wasn't really that good, if you throw in some jokes, it's going to be so much better.
Yeah. They kind of fit with our, well, I know Josh felt a certain different way about it, but that movie Hawk and Rev, we talked about it in a couple episodes ago, and in our review for Gender Nuts of Horror, I believe, where we really talked about that the jokes and the not taking itself seriously is really what saved the movie.
Yeah, even though it wasn't always as funny as it was trying to be.
Yeah. But yeah, Shakespeare's Shitstorm, for those that are fans of Troma, is, in my opinion, is probably the most Troma movie to ever. The most Troma movie to ever Troma a Troma movie. It's just all of the Troma, everything just thrown into, 90 minutes, or I can't remember how long that it was now, since it's been a while.
I think it was like 90 minutes.
Yeah.
And a perfect length too.
Yes.
Yeah, I think I would put Shakespeare's Shitstorm as my number 11. It was like honestly one of the best kind of like surprise things that we had to see, and it was just fucking glorious.
Yeah. Okay, Josh, you're number 5.
Okay, so at 5, I have Vast of Night. Basically, this movie speaks to me personally in a lot of ways because it's a complete homage to the Twilight Zone. It takes place in the 50s, and it's essentially about a town that is kind of in the midst of an alien takeover. But the characters, especially the setting, it's a period piece. I can't remember the exact year, but it was set in the 50s. So I mean, this is definitely a more personal choice that I made in including this, especially that high, because it just, I don't know, it's like all of my shit, and it's really well made. I mean, and I believe it was the director's first movie too. But yeah, it's fabulous. And if you're a fan of the Twilight Zone, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't love the hell out of this.
And that's
did you guys see it?
I was just gonna watch it last night, and I had a friend who saw it, I think when it premiered in like Toronto, like almost maybe last year, but yeah.
That's and it's on Amazon, or it's an Amazon original.
Yeah, I think it is. I'm pretty sure.
The way it looks, I don't think they're similar at all, but it reminds me of the was it The Similars, from the director you like, who did
oh yeah, yeah, it's nowhere near.
Yeah, but for some reason the color scheme and everything about it, I've always in my head, I think, connecting it to that, especially the Twilight Zone reference.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy.
Yeah. Okay, so my number 4 is a serial killer's guide to life. This is directed by Stanton Cousins Rowe, and yeah, it's about a woman who is dealing with, or trying to find herself, and going through all the different types of self-help books and seminars and buying all of the DVDs and everything. And finally, she comes across this woman who says that she can teach her the perfect self-help way, and she can be her student. And so they end up going on this road trip across England to all these different self-help kind of camps and seminars, but this guru is a serial killer. And so they start, basically, it's marketed as the movie Sightseers, which was by Ben Wheatley, and I absolutely love, meets Thelma and Louise. And it's definitely kind of dry British black comedy that was done completely independently. And yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's funny if you're into that type of humor. And the two leads are, I mean, their chemistry works really well together. One of them is Poppy Rowe, who is the wife of the director, and I guess kind of the two main cast members and him have been working kind of together for a long time, so they've developed this very strong working relationship. And I suggest for people to watch it, and of course always, support more indie and everything.
Cool. My number 4 is your guys' favorite, The Columnist, which is a horror comedy that's just not enough for these guys, but basically about a writer in the Netherlands who is getting trolled and ultimately starts to kill the trolls, and has to deal with the consequences of that. I still think it's one of the best ones we got for Fantasia. And I can see we discussed this in a review. I can see the issues with it, especially with the tone of it, and then having sloppy killings that don't fit with a somewhat more realistic tone. But overall, I just thought it was hilarious, dark comedy that I enjoyed, and that was an interesting way to deal with a social issue without being fucking annoying.
Well, I mean, what I will say, because obviously it's all subjective, is that I think it's well done. I like the comedy aspect of it. You can go back to our reviews, and Kyle already kind of talked about what they were and the issues, but I think what works really well for me and for that is that it wasn't so one-sided, like having these trolls just be these one-dimensional caricatures of what we view these trolls as being. You kind of see that it's all kind of these layers of gray. It's not really black or white. I think that's what really works to the comedy's advantage and to the movie's advantage.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
No, I was trying to fucking remember. Like, I thought the movie was pretty good. It's definitely not the 4th best of the year, but yeah, I mean, it was that was Fantasia, right? Is that what you said?
Yeah.
I mean, it was probably one of the. I mean, having no idea what it was, that helped, because, it's, I don't know, when you don't know what you're getting into, and you'd want to do what the chick in the film does and murder fucking trolls. So, I mean, it had good stuff in it. Anyway, so my number 4 is The Lodge. I mean, I know all 3 of us like that movie a lot. And we're definitely not going to be the only 3. It was pretty well received by pretty much everyone. And that's because it's fucking good. The filmmakers were the ones responsible for Goodnight Mommy, which came out a few years before. I'm still kind of shocked at how similar the 2 films are. But The Lodge is better. It's a lot smarter, and I think also just the setting of it is one of the best things about it. And obviously that's not the same in Goodnight Mommy, but just the way that they use the kind of winter setting to just shining the hell out of, you know, this lodge where these people are at.
Yeah.
Probably one of the more effective things in it. So yeah, I know we're pretty much all in agreement that the lodge is fucking good.
Yeah, we did a review of it before, and the lodge is actually one of those ones for me that, you know, as I mentioned prior, that 2020 lasting multiple years, that I just kept forgetting was a 2020 movie.
Oh, I did too.
And but I have to give it credit too, because I'm a huge fan, especially where, you know, growing up in the way north. I'm a fan of movies that know how to utilize snow. There's a lot of horror movies or movies in general that will set things in the snow, but then it doesn't really ever seem like the actors or seem like anybody actually understands what it's like to feel that cold and what it's like to actually deal with snow. It's like a Hallmark snow thing where people are just wearing nice normal jackets and you can just you can walk around like normal. Like, no, there's a cold that seeps into your bones that no matter how many baths you take or anything, you can't get rid of that. And that really shows it. So if I appreciate that in a movie.
Agreed.
Okay. So my number 3, right?
Yep.
Yes.
My number 3 would actually, by all accounts, would seem like it should be my number 1, but it's not, is Possessor by Brandon Cronenberg. And Possessor is about, how do I even explain it? Hit woman, an elite hit woman who uses a machine to basically possess another person to carry out these hits. And she's dealing with kind of connections to her own life to make her not a truly effective hit woman, even though she, is the best of the best. And she also kind of goes overboard where she's given a gun to do these things, but she always finds the most violent way to do it instead. So she comes across this, has to kill this corporate owner played by Sean Bean, who runs a company that they spy into your webcams and find. So right now Kyle has movie posters and he has like a chair behind him. So there's specific people looking at his webcam and saying, okay, look at that chair. So we're going to throw him all these ads based around that chair that he has and stuff like that.
This chair that was given to me.
Yeah. So they're hired to kill him, and she impersonates, goes into the mind of Sean Bean's daughter's boyfriend. But the boyfriend is able to kind of, break the connection a little bit. So there's this whole ordeal with finding the identity in these two minds inside one body, and it gets extra violent and gory and over the top. And no, it's really good and it's very thought-provoking. A lot of people have considered it basically a spiritual sequel to David Cronenberg's Existence or things like that. But I think obviously watching it does feel very much like a Cronenberg movie, which is, I guess, hard to get away from for the Son, but it does stand on its own to show a lot of, talent behind him.
Cool. Yeah, I haven't seen it.
Same. Yeah, still need to see it.
we may or may not get, I don't know, but that's a whole other story. We might have it as a screener.
Oh, okay.
If it all works out, but we'll see.
Yeah, okay. Sure we will.
We'll see. That's what she said about Synchronic.
Yeah.
Zero
we
remaining
did get
views.
the link.
Yeah, we got that sad little link, that sad little glimmer of hope.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
My number 3 is Detention, which Craig has as his number 2.
So we will, I guess, I get to steal Kyle's thunder, and we'll talk about it when there. Yeah. Okay, so Josh, your number 3.
My number 3 is The Invisible Man. For people that don't know, and for people who care, Lee Winnell is my hero. It's funny to me too, because out of all of his output, this is the worst thing he's done, and it made my number 3 of the best of the year list. So, The Invisible Man is also my favorite Universal character. So to see him take a stab at this and do as good a job as I think you could do, it was cool to see. And the film is very Lee Winnell. It's smart as hell. And it's just full of a lot of good ideas that you can tell he really cared about what he was doing. He really wanted to make a good Invisible Man film, and he sure as shit did. So Invisible Man's my number 3.
Yeah, I had it as number 10 because it deserved to be on the list. And honestly, it's more than a number 10. But it's a fucking great movie. The only thing is it's not as much fun as like Upgrade or other Lee Winnell films. That's the only like detracting thing I have to say about it.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
I have not seen it yet. I should. It's been on my whatever HBO on demand thing, and I even own it now, but have yet to watch it.
Shame on you.
Yeah. Okay. So number 2, as I stole Kyle's thunder, we are talking about Detention, the other huge highlight from our stint with Fantasia, and it's based on a. Are we getting?
Yeah, we're getting some weird echo.
Oh. Echo.
Fuck, I gotta say too, I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the story of Detention is about it's based off a video game, which means it's probably one of the best video game adaptations ever done. And it's about 2 students during this horrible time, and you had all the notes were in Thailand, I want to say, wasn't it?
I want to say
Taiwan.
Taiwan. It's Taiwan.
Yeah, it's Taiwan. Sorry. But where they basically went through this idea of the Red Scare, like we did, but they did in the 60s. But yeah, where they would find anybody they suspected of communism, torture them, kill them. They banned a lot of books, art, things like that. And so that is frightening in itself, and some of those frightening stuff. But then these students kind of wake up in this weird, the best way to describe it is this weird kind of Silent Hill kind of afterworld thing where they're trapped in the school with these ghost-like creatures, and they're trying to figure out all of these mysteries. And it's the opposite of what I was saying earlier about kind of all these brooding, dark movies and the enjoyment of something with some comedy and relief. This is a very serious movie through and through. But it's incredible. I loved it. I know Netflix just dropped a series, like an 8-episode series on it too. I haven't watched it yet, but yeah, I absolutely love Detention. It has a lot of the Asian horror themes that people are associated with an American audience, or for American audiences. But yeah, it's dread-filled and incredible, in my opinion.
Yeah, it was definitely the best video game movie ever made. Hands down.
That's why when I remember hearing or finding out that it was a video game movie, I was like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. That was good.
And we wrote a review on it as well, which you can for Ginger Nuts of Horror, and we talked about it in a previous episode.
All right. Is it me again? So
yep, I steal your thunder again.
My number 2 is Craig's number 1, Color Out of Space.
Okay, Josh, you're number 2.
My number 2 is The Dark and the Wicked. That movie was amazing. I was not expecting it to be that good. Kind of like my comment on Vast of Night, just being kind of like my shit and like speaking to me. Dark and the Wicked kind of does the same thing because it's such a small film with a real simple story, but it just fucking works because Brian Bertino, he fucking knows what he's doing, and there were parts of it that were really kind of uncomfortable, and I mean, you know, it's hard to make a person as old as me feel that way, but this one did a few times, so. I think a lot of people, I don't know if anybody that I've talked to that's seen this that said they didn't like it. Sort of like with The Lodge. I feel like it just kind of universally liked. But of course, Dark and the Wicked came out. It was, feel like it was in December. It might have been November, but anyway, the tail end of 2020 where you're never going to get anything in a theater, at least not if you're not a fucking idiot. So you know, it was straight to streaming, which is unfortunate, but fuck off, I saw it.
I heard it's I mean the same type of thing that people could, I haven't watched it yet, but the only reason why people would complain about something like The Lodge is that it's a long, slow burn. That's what I heard about the movie.
Yeah, this definitely is. And honestly, the only thing I can really think of to complain about is that for whatever reason, they use the shit out of CGI blood and it doesn't look good. And it, like, you notice it so much. And it's like, I understand, you know, like if you fuck that up and you're using, you know, Caro syrup, just the reset time is just going to be annoying as shit. But I don't understand. I mean, it was really like noticeable, and it didn't look good. So that's the one thing that I can say it didn't work. But other than that, solid film.
Okay. Well, okay. So my number 1, which is mentioned, but it is Color Out of Space, Richard Stanley's return to making features after what year was Dust Devil? He tried to make Island of Dr. Moreau, but
fucking like 92?
Yeah, it was early 90s. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know Hardware was 90, and yeah. But yeah, I don't know, for some reason, for me, as Josh talked about Vast of Night or Dark and the Wicked, for some reason, Color Out of Space for me is just the thing that fires on all cylinders. It's absurd in a way. It has body horror, which I love, absolutely. The color schemes are incredible. And yeah, I think it shows a lot of, I mean, Richard Stanley has always had kind of used a lot of colors and has had an interesting voice, but I think this time away from doing features almost really matured him in a way, and you can tell there's a lot of care and heart into the movie, like that because he's a huge Lovecraft fan, and it's owed to his mom a lot, especially with some of the cancer subplot and things like that, which I know he dealt with personally. But yeah, it even works that Nicolas Cage, you know, plays normal in the beginning and then goes into his crazy, what we're associating with Nicolas Cage's crazy acting, but everybody matches his level too. So it doesn't just feel like he's playing Nicolas Cage in some random movie that doesn't fit in this world. I think it works perfectly. And yeah, I can't say enough good things about it.
Same here. Yeah, it was my number 2. But it could have easily been my number one. I mean, I loved it. I thought it was probably, aside from maybe like Reanimator, probably my favorite like Lovecraft adaptation.
Yeah, I actually just saw it not too long ago, and I have it up. It was on my number 6, and you know, it's one of the stories of Lovecraft that I actually know probably the best. And I think the story is like 20 pages long.
Yeah.
So they obviously had to add a bunch of shit to this to the plot. They added too much. The film's too long, but I feel like what they did add and built, it was pretty admirable. The one thing that I didn't care for, which is kind of a minor thing, but to me it just stuck out like ridiculous, was there's kind of like a hinted subplot with the mayor that literally goes nowhere, and you didn't even need that character in there at all anyway, because she never comes back. And it's like, I don't know why, but I just remembered that, and it's like, oh yeah, remember when they were gonna try to do this like subplot thing about this mayor being corrupt or whatever it was, and then it just, you never hear about it again. So in the future, just omit shit like that.
Well, I think
that was the whole reason that the stuff was getting polluted. Wasn't that part of
because they were going to the dam thing, so they were going to fill it with water, you know, or whatever. They were going to flood the area.
Right, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was like hinted at that it was all because of something that she did or was going to do, and then it just never comes back again. And it's like, you didn't even need that character to start with, and then did you just forget about that subplot thing, or I don't know, whatever.
Which I'm curious about if she'll pop up later, because what he's doing, the Dunwich Horrors, there's supposed to be a whole trilogy, and they're going to connect them in some way or another. So I'm wondering. Yeah,
that's just a plant, man. He's pulling a George Lucas.
Yeah,
he's got 7 films plotted.
He's doing Marvel.
I don't know. Yeah.
Okay.
Good. So just make him shorter.
Yes.
Kyle's number 1.
Yeah, my number 1 is also Josh's number 1, so we can just talk about VFW.
Oh man.
Again, it's one that I forgot because I think we watched it in 2019 for Fright Fest. So
I don't know.
Well,
Craig, you and I were talking about this on Friday. It was like, God damn, it actually was 2020 when VFW came out, even though we saw it, because it was released in theaters on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
So yeah, fuck it.
Which one of you wants to do the synopsis for VFW?
It's a bunch of veterans fighting a bunch of punk mutants, and the veterans are all the best character actors. You know, you don't really need to know anything else.
Like maybe ever. Yeah. It's basically, it's obviously very Assault on Precinct 13-ish, which is fucking awesome. It's clearly, Joe Begos is obviously just doing a throwback homage film, which, like, for example, I'm staring right now at my copy of VFW that's a VHS in one of the giant fucking foam boxes, because that's the exact aesthetic that Begos was going for. And if it weren't for the company involved with making this thing, it would probably, hang around for in my top whatever list for a long ass time, because it is, again, it's my shit 100%, and it's just brutal too. It's so, yeah. I mean, I can't honestly. It's the number 1 film from 2 of us for a reason.
Well, all the issue too. I think it really hurt VFW, because VFW came out, and then all the news about the company ended up coming out like a month later, and then VFW's price dropped where the Blu-ray you could get for cheap, and because
there was whatever about Fred Williamson too, supposedly.
Yeah.
Which is a shame.
Yeah.
But
so that's our top 10 of 2020. And of course, as always, it's always subjective. And if you have top 10s that you want to send our way that you loved throughout the year, or ones that we didn't cover that we haven't seen, or you even want to comment on some of our top 10s themselves, like, comment, share, send us all your stuff. As always, thanks for listening.
Bloodhound Pix podcast is part of the Morbidly Beautiful podcast network. Produced by Josh Lee, Craig Draheim, and Kyle Hintz. Music by Raymond Seed. Editing by Kyle Hintz.